Ladies and gentlemen, you are not going to believe what just happened because after 4 decades of preaching the same progressive gospel, after 40 years of defending identity politics, social engineering, and every cultural experiment that the left has ever rolled out, Bernie Sanders finally snapped on camera in real time and in a moment that was so raw, it was so honest, so unexpected that he said the quiet part out loud. For the first time in his entire career, Bernie admitted that the Democratic Party, this is the party that he dedicated his life to, abandoned the working class, abandoned families, abandoned men, and in the process set this country on fire. And folks, when I tell you that this wasn't some polite disagreement or policy debate, this was a reckoning. In fact, a collision with reality that is so brutal that even Bernie Sanders couldn't run from it anymore. Because here in November 2025, under President Donald J. Trump's second administration, the truth is impossible to hide. Our boys are failing. Our cities are collapsing. Fatherlessness is exploding. Crime is out of control. Masculinity is demonized. And identity politics, the left's golden calf, has absolutely destroyed the very people that Democrats claim to champion. It's unbelievable, the hypocrisy. And for the first time ever, Bernie Sanders, he looked straight into the camera and he admitted, we were wrong. All of it was wrong. This right there, guys, this is the moment that the Democratic Party never wanted you to see, because once you strip away the slogans, the hashtags, the pronoun lectures, you're left with one very devastating truth. Identity politics didn't fix America, it broke America. So let's get into it. Hit the like button and subscribe. Right after that jaw-dropping intro moment, the interview kind of takes a turn that nobody saw coming. It's late 2025, Trump is back in the White House, Democrats are still licking their wounds from historic losses, and suddenly Bernie Sanders, Mr. Progressive icon, looks like a man carrying 40 years worth of regret. He looks like he's been awake for the last 40 years with the bags under his eyes. They're worse than the bags under my eyes. Anyway, the host doesn't let him breathe. He presses Bernie Sanders on identity politics, on fatherlessness, on the collapse of young men, and Bernie's usual platitudes they just fall apart. Now, for the first time, Bernie doesn't argue. He doesn't deflect. He doesn't even blame the billionaires this time. Instead, he mutters the words that shock the political world. We lost the plot. It's Bernie's first moment of unfiltered honesty in 4 decades? So this is where the dam breaks, guys. So Bernie, the same man who spent his life shouting about working class issues, admits that the Democratic Party hasn't represented workers in years. He explains how Democrats shifted from bread and butter economic concerns to niche cultural fights that almost nobody asked for. I mean, he even points back to 2024 when inflation crushed families while Democrats obsessed over DEI training and gender panels. Meanwhile, in Trump's 2025 return, working class households finally saw leadership focused on tariffs, trade fairness, energy independence, and restoring the border. Now, these were the issues that voters were screaming about, but Democrats, they ignored them. And Bernie, he knows it. He said it out loud. We forgot about the real economic plan. Well, Bernie he really does try to defend identity politics, but even he can't ignore the data that is clearly shown. The Democratic Party stopped talking about wages, jobs, manufacturing, or even the cost of living. And instead, they poured all of its energy into pronouns, DEI seminars, and culture war theatrics that alienated millions. I mean, the breaking point for many voters came during the 2024 campaign. Many of you guys remember when Kamala Harris leaned into that now infamous they-them ad, signaling to everyday Americans that the party cared more about symbolic gestures than survival. Meanwhile, Trump's 2025 messaging hit every kitchen table issue: affordability, border security, community safety. Bernie Sanders, he stumbles when the host asked him how identity politics helped anyone. Because for many adults, for many Americans, it just didn't. It only divided them. Now, before we move on, I do want to pause just for a second because what we're talking about here, families being ignored, working people being forgotten, kind of reminds me of something that thousands of you have been dealing with personally. Your bills, your costs, your retirement pressure. And there just kind of comes a moment where you sit at the kitchen table, you look at your Medicare paperwork, and you think, why am I even putting up with this nonsense? And this is the moment that matters, guys. This is the same moment that so many of you told me about. And this is exactly why I partner with Chapter. Chapter helps you take that moment seriously. They actually review your Medicare plan with honesty and 100% free for the Ron Yates community. There's no tricks, there's no pressure, there's no nonsense. And they make sure that your Medicare coverage is something that you feel proud of, not something you feel stuck with. Now, one of our viewers wrote in and said, I realized I was settling. Chapter changed that. And another subscriber messaged me directly. This is from B Singletary 125, said, Call Chapter. I pay $0 for my Part B. Love them. Hey, people are choosing better because they finally see that they have options. So if you're ready to take that moment seriously, give the phone number a call down below at the bottom of your screen or visit askchapter.org/Ron. That phone number again is 909-563-8279. All right, so let's get back to the breakdown. Then the host goes for the jugular. Fatherlessness. Bernie Sanders freezes because the numbers here are absolutely devastating. Boys raised without fathers are twice as likely to end up incarcerated. They face higher depression levels, lower academic achievement, higher addiction rates, and more instability across every life metric. In cities like DC, Detroit, Baltimore, Chicago, and in even Oakland, they have felt the consequences for years. Entire neighborhoods spiraling into what residents describe as war zones. Trust me, I grew up in a single-parent household. I know exactly what that's like. And the host explains how progressive welfare incentives, social engineering, and the ideological dismantling of the nuclear family created this crisis. And this time, Bernie doesn't argue. He nods slowly and mutters, "Family breakdown. Yeah, it's a crisis." A rare moment of truth. Now, before we jump into the next topic, let me just say this. One of the biggest problems in today's media landscape is that information spreads faster than it can be verified. Algorithms shove us into these echo chambers, context gets stripped away, and the financial incentive is to keep us angry, not to keep us informed. This is why I use Ground News. Guys, it pulls from 50,000 plus sources worldwide, showing every outlet's bias rating, factuality score, and ownership. I mean, just take a look at today's story on illegal immigration enforcement. Over 20 outlets covered it. You can see how left-leaning headlines soften the language when right-leaning outlets are emphasizing the crime surge. I love Ground News because it helps you think clearly, compare perspectives, and break out of the bubble. So scan the QR code on your screen right there, or feel free to use my link in the description down below. The link is ground.news/Ron Yates to get 40% off of their Vantage plan. From there, the conversation shifts to something that's even more explosive, folks. The collapse of young men in America. The host lays out the stats. Women now outnumber men 2-1 in college. Suicide among young men has skyrocketed 40% since 2010. Loneliness is at historic highs. More young men are dropping out of the workforce, turning to addiction, or just simply giving up. And yet, the left offers zero programs, incentives, or government resources dedicated to men or boys. Nothing. Bernie tries to explain it away, but the host interrupts. How did your party ignore half the population? Bernie has no answer. Progressive culture labeled masculinity toxic, leaving an entire generation of boys without direction, identity, or even purpose. And so this is where Bernie looks genuinely shaken. I mean, because the host points out something that Bernie just can't deny. Under the left's identity hierarchy, white men are automatically labeled oppressors, and every other demographic was placed into an oppressed category. The result? Millions of young men of all races felt blamed, dismissed, and demonized for simply existing. And as Democrats pushed this narrative, something dramatic happened. Young men walked away from the party in record numbers and moved toward Trump's message of strength, discipline, building, and purpose. Now, Bernie Sanders, he finally admits that the ranking system never worked, and it never could. Now, for the first time, he acknowledges that portraying men as villains didn't create justice. It created resentment, rage, and political realignment. And then comes the moment that shakes Bernie Sanders the hardest, the abandonment of Black Americans. Now, the host cites the same data that Bernie has seen for years. Fatherless Black communities face the highest instability, with soaring crime, failing schools, and generational poverty. Yet, Democrats pushed these open borders, flooding the labor market and displacing the very workers that they claim to champion. Black Americans lost jobs to illegal immigration, and cities descended into spiraling violence as gangs gained ground. I mean, the host even quotes Malcolm X's famous warning about white liberals. Bernie pauses. Then he nods. He admits Democrats overpromised, underdelivered, and ultimately hurt the communities that they swore to uplift. A moment no one ever expected from him. And so now the conversation hits the issue that Democrats avoided for a decade: crime and immigration. Now, the host details how sanctuary city policies defunded police departments and law enforcement from 2020 through 2024, fueling America's most violent crime wave in years. Fentanyl poured in across the border, MS-13 and cartel networks expanded. Cities like New York, Chicago, and Los Angeles, they faced unprecedented surges in assaults, thefts, and even gang activity. Then he contrasts it with President Trump's return in 2025. Border enforcement restored. Police supported again. Gang takedowns nationwide. Public safety returning. Bernie has no defense. Identity politics prevented Democrats from talking about crime because acknowledging the problem meant targeting certain groups. But now, well, the consequences are impossible to ignore. And then next, the host brings Bernie right on back to the issue that he built his entire career on, the working class. But this time, Bernie can't hide from the truth. He admits that the Democrats became the party of elite academics, Silicon Valley technocrats, and wealthy urban progressives. Meanwhile, at the same time, the very people who built this country, they were pushed aside. Men, families, blue-collar workers, minority laborers. Meanwhile, Trump's 2025 agenda, it focused clearly on industrialized jobs, domestic manufacturing, infrastructure rebuilding, and lowering household costs through tariff restructuring. The contrast is undeniable. Bernie finally concedes. He said, "We talked more about symbolism than survival." And the working class noticed. They walked away. And the Democratic Party, they still haven't figured out why. Then comes one of the most revealing moments of the entire interview. The host explains how universities became ideological factories, pumping out these identity politics dogma, DEI bureaucracy, and the anti-masculinity narratives. Students were taught to divide the world into victims and oppressors, with men, especially white men, placed automatically at the bottom. Now, Bernie, he listens as the host shows how DEI exploded between 2015 and 2024. Entire departments built around race lectures, pronoun battles, and grievance politics, millions of dollars wasted, zero improvement in actual outcomes, and the college gender gap, women outnumbering men 2-1, proved what Bernie no longer denies. The left created a system where men were not welcome. He admits that they lost control of the monster that they built. Now, at this point, the host lays out something that Democrats still refuse to face. The entire country is rejecting identity politics. The AEI analysis is crystal clear. Voters in 2024 and 2025 didn't just disagree with the left's cultural agenda, they revolted against it. Working class whites left, black men left, Hispanic men left, even suburban women, once a Democratic stronghold, started swinging back after seeing chaos in their schools and their communities. And the reason is simple. Identity politics requires constant division. You must separate Americans by race, gender, sexuality, and victim status. But America's tired of all this. They want unity, they want safety, we want stability and affordability. And Bernie knows that. So he quietly admits Democrats can no longer communicate with the groups that they once claimed to champion. So this is the moment that stunned everyone watching. Bernie Sanders, the face of progressivism as we know it, finally drops the shield. He looks exhausted, defeated, almost ashamed. He admits that the party that he defended for 4 decades hurt the very people that it promised to help. He said it plainly. We alienated millions. We ignored them. We ignored families. We ignored the working class. Crime exploded, schools collapsed, immigration spiraled, and identity politics failed. The host sits in silence. Bernie Sanders continues, "We were wrong. Not about a few things, about everything." This is a confession that the Democratic establishment feared would ever reach the public. And now, in 2025, under President Trump, the truth is finally out. So what makes Bernie's confession even more earth-shattering is the moment we're in right now, late 2025, with Donald J. Trump back in the White House, back in the Oval Office, because the contrast is impossible to ignore. You can't not see it. After 4 years of spiraling chaos, inflation, border failures, and cultural extremism, Trump's policies have brought stability back to working families. Tariff restructuring leveled the playing field. Border enforcement restored safety. Pro-family messaging revived confidence. Police regained support. So when Bernie admits Democrats abandoned men, families, and the working class, it hits harder than ever. He knows the political winds have shifted. He knows Americans are done with ideological experiments, and he fears that Democrats won't recover for an entire generation. So by the end of the interview, one truth becomes undeniable. The left's 40-year culture experiment has collapsed under its own weight. Identity politics failed. The family broke down. Young men spiraled. Black families suffered. Crime exploded. The working class fled. And all the slogans, labels, hashtags, and lectures in the world couldn't hide the damage. Bernie Sanders, the man who helped build the movement, now admits the consequences openly. And America, under Trump in 2025, is left to clean up the wreckage. But the good news is the country is waking up. People are reclaiming their families, their values, their communities, and their future. The era of division is over. Reality has returned, and the truth always wins. Hit the like button, share this video, subscribe. We'll see you next time.